One of my big questions is, what are the Chinese doing in the United States that we are not able to do in China? They're able to invest in certain industries in the United States. They prevent U.S. investments there. How can we find ways to deal with these Chinese practices in some other way than random tariffs? We had ZTE on its knees when it came to realizing their practices that they had. If we would have done something there, this could have had an impact, tectonic impact on Chinese companies. Chinese companies are allowed to operate like U.S. companies here in the United States. Let's look at Alibaba. But U.S. companies are not treated like Chinese companies in China. If we made some changes there, would it have an impact? And we have to look. We know the Chinese are trying to become the world leader in some of the top industries like artificial intelligence. Were the Chinese using active measures in something like the rift between Google and Department of Defense over Project Maven? These are some questions, and are businesses prepared for nation states using disinformation and influence operations to achieve a strategic goal?
Congressman Hurd, you mentioned ZTE, and I just wonder how you think of the administration right now, because clearly the administration in some quarters shares your concerns. That's why we're seeing these trade talks really ramp up and the tariffs lay in. But when it came to ZTE, I know the Congress was pretty frustrated when there was almost universal agreement in Congress about what to do with ZTE, and the administration moved to ease some of those regulations.
I'm still not clear on why ZTE and Huawei, these are extensions of the Chinese government, period, full stop. And they are trying to become the infrastructure of the rest of the world. The Chinese do not care about things like privacy. And so when we had them in a place where it was clear that they committed a number of international violations, we had the opportunity to show a real message to China that we're not playing around, and we let them go. Instead, we're using tariffs which are pretty haphazard and are actually impacting American businesses. So we understand how China is stealing our technology. We understand how China is trying to force technology transfer. What other steps can we do that impact Chinese businesses and China's investment opportunities in the United States to prevent them from doing that against us in China? Those are some of the areas that we are going to explore. And again, something that people aren't talking about is when you look at a decision that Google made to separate from Department of Defense. Was this influenced in some form or fashion by Chinese active
But how
measures?
much of it, just before, Eric Cantor's here, and I want to get to him for just a second. He's got a question for you. How much of this conversation today is overlaid by these issues around a view that the Valley has a political leaning or bias, a liberal bias, if you will, in part based on some of the videos you've seen? You saw some of the employees at Google and whatnot. I mean, how much of that is playing into this conversation?
Well, on the conversation that we're going to have today at my subcommittee, that is not something that is being taken into account. This is about how do we make sure U.S. businesses stay the leader in innovation, stay the leader in some of these key sectors that are going to be important for our future, and how do we defend against practices by the Chinese government that is negatively impact our economy and our businesses.
Hey, Will, and first of all, I want to congratulate you on navigating that minefield down there and the reputation I think you've earned as a strategic thinker, especially in matters of cybersecurity. And just was wondering sort of how all this fits into this sort of 21st century great power politics that's going on between us and the U.S. and China. And as you referred to, there's just a lot of hacking that's we know about that's been going on, and sort of how that sort of relates to Chinese requirement of U.S. companies to share proprietary information.
It is very clear the Chinese government is trying to, by 2049, become the world superpower and replace us by that. That's not based on my time as an undercover officer in the CIA collecting information. That's based on their comments about themselves. And the way that they're going to get there is to be a leader in 10 of the future industries that involve around high tech. And the quickest way for them to get there is what they've been doing, stealing our technology, forcing technology transfer, using debt traps with countries and in businesses, and we need to be prepared to deal with that. They have a national strategy. They have an emperor in place for the next 40 years, and we don't even have a strategy on how we deal as a country between the public and the private sector and academia on something like artificial intelligence. So this is great power politics, and we need to step up our game.